Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The best weekend talk lineup is on Super Talk 1270. Check out the program schedule at supertalk1270.com and on the free Super Talk 1270 app. It's time for Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. Talk of the Town, brought to you by Big Boy. Just get in line. It moves fast. Benchmark Mortgage. Call Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner, at 701-400-3926. Dakota Pharmacy and Dakota Natural Health Center. We're here to help you stay well. Trademark Realty. Peak Automotive and Service. And Silver Ranch.
You're tuned to Talk the Town on Super Talk 1270. Good morning. I'm Steve Bakken, and joining us in the program, Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center. And, you know, Kevin, this is about our 40th show now, and we always have guests and talk some great topics. You've never really been my guest. You've kind of been a co-host.
Yeah.
So
thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. We're going to do something a little different today because you're going to be my guest. I want to get your background because you're kind of transitioning a little bit, starting to look at retirement-ish, or easing out of things. And you've got a great story. And the reason I like doing talk radio, it's because I like having stories told. It's about the story. And you've got a great story of where you started to going through the process, the little bit of a reinvention that took place with compounding, and then where you are today with these different entities all nestled inside of downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. It's really a great story. And I got thinking about that. It's like, give us a little background.
Okay.
Tell us about Kevin Oberlander today.
So
where'd you start out?
I was born and raised in Mott, southwestern part of the state. My dad was a barber, and we lived in the same building as the barber shop. So I grew up on Main Street in Mott. My bedroom was below the barber shop. And right next door was a drugstore. Mott Drug, and a guy by the name of Bob Carvel was the pharmacist, well-respected individual. His car was there all the time. He was always in the pharmacy. He was always helping somebody out. And then my mom actually worked for him because she could just walk out the front door of the barbershop and right over to the drugstore.
Perfect.
And it was a cool little store. It had a soda fountain when it...
They all did back then.
Yeah, when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's the only thing you're missing.
Yeah.
I really wish you had one.
And one of my best friends in high school and through life, his dad was the pharmacist. So, we spent a lot of time in the pharmacy, in Mott Drug. Boxes of baseball cards would come in, so we'd get first dibs on buying a box of cards and going over to our place and opening them up and, collating them and putting into boxes. And so it was a really cool upbringing, growing up right on Main Street, right by the drugstore. As I got older and we started talking about the potential of, I was the oldest, so the potential of maybe going to college, it was kind of like, well, I could be a barber.
Kind of flip a coin. I'm going to barber college or what?
Pharmacy school. And my mom really encouraged me to go to pharmacy school. And there were a couple individuals that were older than me. Jerry was 2 years older. And there were two Jerrys that went to pharmacy school. So I kind of decided I was going to follow that model. So I went to pharmacy school at NDSU in Fargo. And my dream started to become owning a drugstore in a small town because that's what I knew. Once I graduated, and we went through what at that time were called internships.
But in North Dakota, with the way the rules are in North Dakota with pharmacy ownership, that really helps facilitate that.
Yeah,
you don't get that opportunity in a lot of other states.
No, the pharmacy ownership law went into effect in 1969. We have some Oscos in the state that grandfathered through that. But if you look at the small towns in the state that still have pharmacies, and we have more pharmacies per capita than any other state, just because of the ownership law. So the opportunity was really there, As I start to put together my idea of maybe owning my own store, it really got to be, a financial situation. My mom and dad didn't have a lot of money, and I worked my way through college. I actually worked as a house painter for a guy in Mott during the summers to put myself through school.
And you weren't a teacher.
And I wasn't a teacher. And, and that brings me to a time it was after my third year, and I'd been painting with a guy by the name of Ed Birch, and he was a great house painter. And he was getting up in age, and I got to thinking maybe I should buy his business, because that I might be able to pull off. I remember going home for lunch one day, and it was just my mom and I said, I'm seriously considering quitting pharmacy school and buying Ed's painting business, because he thinks he could mentor me in the ownership of that business. She never batted an eye. She leaned forward and she said, "You'll do nothing of the sort."
Way to go, Mom.
Yep.
Hey, I want to back up a little bit, because you talked about the ownership side of things, and we're coming up against a break, but explain the difference, that ownership law we have in North Dakota that came into being in 1969, and the forethought that went into that think of the situation in 1969. We're a small rural state, low population, and how do you meet the needs of a rural population? Talk a little bit about the opportunity that ownership law provides in North Dakota versus other states.
Yeah, the foresightedness of our pharmacy leaders back at that time, I think, was almost remarkable. Most states had ownership laws prior to that, and they were going away. Our forefathers really decided that it was essential to protect that for the good of the patient. That was really their focus. I had the great opportunity to first work for an individual from Bismarck. His name was Tony Walter. He was very involved in North Dakota pharmacy politics. The Board of Pharmacy is in Bismarck and was at that time. So I had coffee every morning with the director of the Board of Pharmacy and the people that were in the office. When there was a board meeting in town, they would all come over we were in Quain and Ramstead Clinic. They'd all come over and go to the basement and have coffee, and I would join them. So I got a front row seat to the mindset of those individuals that got the ownership law passed back in 1969.
Because that ownership opportunity doesn't arise in other states like it does in North Dakota.
No, when I go to, I'm pretty involved in national pharmacy issues, and when I go to meetings and I tell them I'm from North Dakota, they point at me. Everybody points and says, "You guys still are the only people that know how to do pharmacy." Because, and just I think it's just this last year, a small eastern state, I'm thinking Vermont or New Hampshire, they actually tried to get an ownership law passed, which they realized it was probably really fruitless, because if they did, any of the big box stores could remain because they would grandfather them through. So they kind of gave it up. We've not seen an ownership law challenge now for a few years. The word is that the big box minds are thinking that they might need to go after it again. And it's the idea that another state thought about trying to get an ownership law passed. So, and this is my thoughts, I think their thought is if we can just get rid of North Dakota in this ownership law thing, then it's just really game over for these little guys. We'll see.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270, and my guest this morning really hasn't been a guest, been a co-host, Kevin Oberlander, talking about his pathway to where he is today with pharmacy. When we come back, this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Michael, along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center. And Kevin is actually my guest today, not my co-host. We're talking about his pathway through pharmacy and the compounding world, and we'll get to all that. So, young kid coming from Mott, North Dakota, going to pharmacy school at NDSU.
Yep, absolutely. And at that time, they were called internships. So you served a 10-week internship at a site. The married students tended to get the sites in Fargo. I wanted to stay in Fargo. I thought it would be a great place to live.
Young guy having fun, big city. Yeah. Oh yeah. What could go wrong?
But I got sent to Bismarck. My internship was at a pharmacy called Bismarck Pharmacy.
No, you weren't sent to Bismarck. You were lucky enough to be assigned to Bismarck.
Now that's true.
Yes,
Very
it
true.
is.
Yep. And the owner of this little pharmacy, Tony Walter, we were in that pharmacy was housed in what is now the city administrative building. At that time, it was called Quain and Ramstead Clinic. Tiny little cubbyhole pharmacy, but it had a feel. It felt a lot like what I saw when I was growing up at Mott Drug. So I saw it as an opportunity. Tony offered me a job once I graduated, and I kind of saw an opportunity. He was getting up in age, and I saw an opportunity to maybe have a chance to buy into the pharmacy and become a pharmacy owner.
Which is what you wanted to do.
Which is what I wanted to do.
The ownership side.
But he decided to give it up a couple years after I got out of school. And then Tony Welder, who many of you probably know, bought the pharmacy and kept me on. And then we moved into what was then Med Center 1. And I worked for him there for several years. We actually joined a compounding group at that time. I was looking to get out of pharmacy. I was kind of disillusioned. It was the start of the walk-in clinics, and we had to stay open at night till the last patient was seen. I had a young family, and I was getting home at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night because we had to wait till all the sick people were, triaged and seen, and if they needed a prescription, they wanted these people to get service. So I actually interviewed for a sales job with Pfizer. Another one of these thank God moments. Tony had been to a national meeting. He actually became the National Community Pharmacists Association president, the only pharmacist from North Dakota to serve in that capacity. But he had been to a meeting, and he had breakfast with a guy who was talking about having joined a compounding group. And when I approached Tony and told him I was interested in a sales job, he goes, "Let's look into this." And my first boss, Tony Walter, was kind of the guy that people sent the stuff to when they needed a couple creams mixed. And we were making some progesterone suppositories back in, I graduated in 1980. So in the mid-'80s, we were making some progesterone suppositories. And when I think back, we really didn't have any idea what we were doing. We were reading some of the pharmacy literature. I know we were creating too much heat when we were doing this. We had a little hot plate and a metal bowl and bases and powders, and we'd mix it and we'd pour it into molds, and doctors would prescribe it and we'd dispense it. But
brings up an interesting question, though, because if you go back and look at the history, we talked before a little bit about where a lot of the compounding stuff comes from, and that's original medicine.
That was the art and science of pharmacy.
Compounding is original medicine. And then there's this vein that runs through that with the trial and error. And you kind of have to wonder, where the snake oil component comes in, because there is a little vein of that when you're going through trial and error process.
There really is. And having been proudly a compounding pharmacist for 30 plus years, I spent hours in the lab as that became more developed, just trying to put together bases. And, I threw so much stuff away that just didn't work. But I learned from that. And it's I've been very fortunate. I always say compounding saved my profession. If I wouldn't have found it, I probably wouldn't be a pharmacist.
Let's talk a little bit about that when we come back from the break. I want to get into that compounding, that epiphany moment for you and where that led to today. We're talking with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. Didn't always used to be where it is, though.
No.
We'll find out about that as well. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Now, for the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Talk 1270 on Alexa.
Hiya.
Find out how at supertalk1270.com.
Goodbye.
Talk of the Town, brought to you by Big Boy, just get in line, it moves fast. Benchmark Mortgage. Call Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner, at 701-400-3926. Dakota Pharmacy and Dakota Natural Health Center. We're here to help you stay well. Trademark Realty, Peak Automotive and Service, and Silver Wrench. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach, along with Kevin Oberlander, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota National Health Center. Kevin, of course, not my co-host today. He is my guest. We're talking about his pathway through being a pharmacist and where that led from where it started, humble beginnings, a small boy in Mott, North Dakota, to where he is today with Dakota Pharmacy and downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. Epiphany moment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the compounding side, because you've said quite often that really saved your career.
Yeah, it did. I've said, and I said it earlier, I wouldn't be a pharmacist today if I wouldn't have found the whole compounding pharmacy world. We joined PCCA's, the Professional Compounding Centers of America. So with Tony's foresight, we joined PCCA. I think we're in our 33rd year. They celebrated their 40th anniversary a couple years ago. So again, I had a front row seat to the development of this compounding pharmacy model. I remember a guy Artie Mathis was a pharmacist out of Houston, PCCA's in Houston, and he showed up in Bismarck. He caught word that there maybe was some interest there from Tony's foresight, and he showed up marketing him and his business as a potential to partner with to become a quote-unquote compounding pharmacy. It took his second trip to really convince us, and that's about the time that I was considering leaving pharmacy. Luckily, Artie showed up again, and we decided to take the leap. He trained me in our little cubbyhole pharmacy in what was then Med Center 1. We had a counter maybe an arm's width long that included a sink. He brought some equipment. He brought some chemicals. He brought some formulas. We spent a couple days just putting some stuff together, using recipes. They're formulas, but they're like a recipe, and they have to be done in a certain order, in a certain temperature. And it was really just that was the epiphany for me. Was, well, we've been doing some of this, slapping some creams together, but this is really something different.
So you didn't realize that you just like to cook.
Well, yeah, that's very true. And I do like to cook.
But let's talk a little bit about the compounding side versus being a pharmacist.
Right.
Because compounding is the roots of pharmacy.
Right.
So that would tend me to believe there was a diversion at some point. So if you go to pharmacy school, but compounding's different, but isn't pharmacy compounding, or is it just dispensing what comes in
For my education, it was really a dispensing. It was pharmacology and, learning how drugs interact with each other.
Counting pills.
Yeah. I was
kind of got away from the roots of pharmacy.
It was very much far away because suddenly we had the manufacturing industry, and they were really managing the pharmaceuticals for the majority of the population.
So you had generations of kids going to pharmacy school, not really to be pharmacists.
I had no idea what compounding was coming out of pharmacy school. I was fortunate to land in a small store that was doing a little, and then working for Tony Weld, who had the foresight to convince me not to take a sales job with Pfizer and really investigate what this compounding world was like. At that time, they were having regional meetings, and I remember the first meeting I went to was in Seattle, and there was probably 25 of us there, mostly from the upper West Coast, Denver area. One of the guys I sat by, Joe Weiss out of Colorado, who's still a really good friend of mine, he started handing me pieces of paper with formulas on it. He was writing them down, and he was really into pediatrics. So he was giving me some ideas of, we were in a clinic and we were working very closely with the prescribers at Med Center 1, and he said, you have a great opportunity. You can walk up the back steps and talk to a pediatrician and tell him you have some ideas how you might be able to help some of his patients that are struggling with the flavor of something that they're taking, or the drug only being available as a tablet and they need a dose that it's really not doable unless you can break that down and make it in a dosage form that's palatable and you can dose it correctly. And he had some great diaper rash formulas, and he's turning all this over to me, and I'm like, wow, he's not my competitor, he's my colleague. And it's kind of the first time that I really thought of other pharmacists as not being competitors, because we were competitors back when you went back home. But this was really another epiphany of, wow, I can learn from people that are doing this. And things slowed down a little bit for us. We got really, really busy being a pharmacy inside a clinic that was a bustling place. But Med Center decided, they challenged the ownership law along with some other pharmacies and got a judge in Fargo to allow them to grandfather through the ownership law, because they said they had pharmacies within their building. They were in-house in hospital pharmacies, but the judge actually ruled with them. So Med Center failed to renew our lease at that time. They wanted me to be the manager of the new pharmacy that they were owning, and I told Tony that depending on what he was going to do, I was considering it. And he goes, and I have a chance to move down to the corner of 7th and Main, which is the corner that we're on now. It was a different building. And he said, I'll consider you a partner if you come with me. Because we were really starting to look at compounding a lot more seriously, knowing that we may be leaving the facility. So we felt we had to be different.
Well, just from a space perspective,
right.
You knew you were going to have to leave.
Right. So I moved with him. We moved into the building that is now Terry's Health Food. We had half of that building. There was a hairdresser on the other side. We grew quickly. We needed more space. So the landlord moved the hairdresser to the building just to the east of us, and we took all that space. And in that space, we built a dedicated, walled-off, the first compounding pharmacy lab in the state of North Dakota. And that was really the springboard to where we are now. What did that look
like when you're blazing a trail? So do you go by, well, what do other facilities have?
Yeah.
Because there's really no guidelines in North Dakota at that time.
Well, about that time, I started to go to some more national meetings and meeting other people and learning what they were doing with their facilities. And we were all kind of learning about this together. But going from a space with a sink and maybe a couple feet of countertop to a dedicated room with an island and a dishwasher and, cabinetry. And, we were really big into flavoring medications. When Artie came to train me, one of the things that he did is, after we made stuff for a couple days, he wanted to go out and market the ability to do this. My wife and I have animals. We have pets, and we did at that time. So I called our vet, and I said to Dr. Wheeler, can we come out and visit with you about compounding for vet medicine? And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He said, well, hear me out. And I knew Jim really well because my wife was on the board of directors at the zoo, and Jim was the zoo vet. So it was kind of an easy get in the door. So he sat down with Artie and I, and we started to tell him what we could do, and kind of a light bulb went off. And I swear to God, the next morning, Jim calls me and he goes, I have a cat that needs metronidazole, which is for a bowel problem, and it tastes awful. Do you think you can help me? And Artie was listening, and he goes, tell him yes. So I said, yes, we can make a fish-flavored lozenge using a salt of metronidazole that's almost tasteless. And he said, let's do it. I said, what dose do you need? We made it. The owner came and got it. He called me the following morning. He's like, oh, you guys are onto something. This worked. This feline took that medication, and we have not been able to get it into cats in my career.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the impetus of compounding pharmacy in Bismarck in the state of North Dakota, right there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bike along with Kevin Oberland at Dakota Pharmacy at Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
70.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach along with Kevin Oberland at Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. A lot of other things nestled in there as well. And Kevin, who's usually my co-host, is my guest today. So we're talking about his pathway from a small boy growing up the barbershop in Mott, North Dakota with the pharmacy next door, and going to NDSU for pharmacy school, getting into the compounding world. That leads us to today, where you've got, just a little aside on the compounding thing, where you started with a little counter space that was just tiny in a sink, and it's like, and then I walk into your lab today, and I mean, it's night and day. It's like moonscape compared to.
It is state of the art. We're compliant with all the United States Pharmacopoeia chapters that went into effect November 1st. We've gone through 3 PCAB accreditations with flying colors. PCAB's Pharmacy Compounding Accreditation Board, which is a national accreditation group. Pharmacists come out and they review your processes in your facility. So, we're pretty proud of the facility.
I mean, I look at the space, I look at the technology, I look at the safety protocols and the protocols in place for the product, and I'm like, I can't help but going back and thinking, it's like, really, you're starting on a little countertop with a Bunsen burner and a sink?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Had no idea what we were doing. Had no idea what we were doing to now.
Think back to where you started to today.
I think about it all the time. I think about the processes that we go through, and I work in the lab occasionally doing some check and balances and writing some formulas, and I just think back, man, we were just writing these down on recipe cards and putting them in a file box, and then you couldn't find it, and you had to do it all over again. So I have a quick story about ownership. So I was working at Bismarck Pharmacy, and I was doing some relief work in small towns because owners needed some Saturdays off, and suddenly the drugstore in Linton was going up for sale, and I went home and told my wife, we had recently gotten married, that the drugstore in Linton's up for sale, and I'm really interested because I really my goal was to own a small town pharmacy growing up in a small town. And she said, do it, go look at it, find out what it's all about, but remember this, it's a long drive to Linton every day.
You're going to be commuting.
So, but again, that happened for a reason, and it brings us where we are today.
So you started out in the new location, which formerly Terry's Health Products.
Yep.
Outgrew that,
yep.
And into the new building.
The just kitty corner in that lot. There was a sound business, selling stereos and TVs, Pacific Sound. In the middle was a little research pharmacy, and on the east end was Dr. Dinier had a dermatology clinic, and they were all kind of leaving at about the same time. So I was in ownership at the time, and Tony and I walked over to the space, and we had a vision of what we really are now, being a hybrid facility with retail pharmacy, compounding labs, and then a health center that we would hire people like nurses and health and wellness coaches, and that's where we ended up at. And they gutted.
So again, that was something a little ahead of its time back there with that thought process.
But it was really my association with my colleagues nationally. We were starting to see pharmacies get out of retail pharmacy because of the PBM world that was coming upon us.
We see that in other industries, other pathways in North Dakota were 10 years behind the curve, and other processes taking place around the country. Eventually it trickles into North Dakota, but you kept...
We were kind of on the
cutting edge of that.
Yeah. Once we put in the health center and our labs and retail, I started to get calls from people nationally wanting to know what we were doing. It was a hot button in our industry. Right now, we have a lot of pharmacies who closed down their retail sites. They're compounding only pharmacies, so they don't have anything else but compounding pharmacy in their model. I think that narrows your scope a little bit. So in our retail side, we developed a really robust nutritional supplemental business, our own private line. I don't know that we could have done that if we did just compounding, because so much of what we're doing is trying to integrate the need for supplements in a health plan that includes medication. So we call it integrative medicine. So I think we're in a really, really good space. And when we talk about what we do nationally, I to this day still get some phone calls about how did you get there? How did you start your private line? Can you give me some guidance? Because that's what we want to do. Because they're suffering because PBMs are stealing their money.
So a lot of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of this goes back to over the years, little right place, right time.
Yeah.
But really comes back to a lot of great relationships you've built in the industry in different facets, whether it was local ownership, you starting out, growing up with the right relationship next door, getting into the compounding world, building those relationships. That's really what it comes back to. That's a North Dakota thing.
I've been unbelievably fortunate. My work with PerioProtect in the treatment of gum disease and the development of the gel that's used in these patented trays, that's been a 15-year project. I just stumbled upon that. And, Dr. Keller and I worked together for almost a year in the development of the gel, and we're great friends to this day. But that's the kind of relationship that you can't take for granted. And my pharmacist friends in the country that we're like-minded, we support each other. We talk all the time. We talked about the gum disease lozenges. We're putting together a group of pharmacies trying to secure products so that we can offer this to patients across the country. You can't do that if you don't know the people that you're dealing with, because we trust each other. We know each other. We're really, really like-minded. We get together a couple times a year in person because it's so important, except for the COVID years. But I feel like I've been unbelievably fortunate to develop these relationships.
Going back full circle, think about your upbringing in a small town in North Dakota, Mott, North Dakota, and learning how to build those relationships, and then having that interest to get into the pharmacy side of things. And thank you, Mom, saying, no, you're not going to be a painter.
You'll do nothing of the sort.
I got to try that with my wife. You'll do nothing with. We'll see how that works.
Yeah,
and then bring us full circle today. Amazing lab, amazing Healthline products,
unbelievable staff,
great staff. Again, relationships, especially when you talk about staff retention, recruitment, and what that means for our community here in the Bismarck, Mandan, Lincoln area. This is Talk of the Town. Kevin Oberlander. I'm Steve Bakken, Dakota Pharmacy, Dakota Natural Health Center, downtown Bismarck's Corner Drugstore. Be sure to check it out. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
That was fun.
KLXX AM, Mandan, Bismarck, a Town Square media station, broadcasting from the View Community Credit Union studio. Now you can listen to Super Talk 1270 on Alexa.
Hiya.
Find out how at supertalk1270.com.
Goodbye.
Talk of the Town, brought to you by Big Boy. Just get in line. It moves fast. Benchmark Mortgage. Call Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner, at 701-400-3926. Dakota Pharmacy and Dakota Natural Health Center. We're here to help you stay well. Trademark Realty, Peak Automotive and Service, and Silver Ranch. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bakken along with Joe Sheehan. He is your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. Interest rates.
They are an interesting subject.
Yeah. I mean, coming down a little bit, creeping.
No, they've come down.
Yeah. But I'm kind of wondering what this is setting up for the next year. Because everything kind of takes a little pause right now at this time of the year. But interest rates have come down a little bit. And it's kind of, are they positioning for what could happen after the first of the year? That's my question, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation. For the first time, I'm always glued to Squawk Box in the morning, and typically economic shows are pretty monotone, but they had a very spirited argument today about the Fed, and for the first time, I really listened to some people arguing over whether or not there was a political element to this Fed, and so that's a really interesting debate because obviously
what was their take on it as far as left or right or center?
Well, there was kind of an accusation that potentially this Fed is conspiratorially setting up a favorable Trump picture because most of them are Trump appointees and it goes to show it goes to show. I don't know that I buy any of that. I don't. I don't. These economic kind of trustees, if you want to call them, that this is their professional job, and the real reason for them to get the next job has a lot to do with them being right and being responsible versus them being in somebody's pocket. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get to a cabinet position based on that, if that was your goal. But that's not always their goal, and that's not where the real money's at, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I don't know if I see all of that working out in the conspiracy. But what it does say is, for a long time on this show, we've talked about the disparity between the market's perspective of what should happen and the bond market's perspective of what should be happening.
Well, and two more things, too. So the messaging coming out of the White House, where it's about jobs, and then the Fed working autonomously trying to get a handle on the inflation side of stuff. So there's multiple layers here. It's kind of like that Spock chessboard.
Yeah, versus conspiracy, that's what I see. I don't see conspiracy as much as I see a lack of
cohesiveness.
Right, in terms of plan.
Well, so
from very powerful parties on both sides, and I don't mean the Republican Democrat. I mean, you have an administration that's still spending like a drunk sailor and still wants to. You have a Fed who's sees inflation as the number one problem to the world, and at the same time that you have you do have a consolidating and slowing manufacturing sector. You have supply prices coming down. But in all of that, jobless claims still came out lower than expected today.
Yes.
And so I see
which makes the White House happy.
It makes the White House happy. But if they were on the same page as the Fed,
it pushes inflation.
It shouldn't. Right. And
so here's my question.
It's literally Tony Romo and Terrell Owens. It literally is. It is one person on a completely different same page saying they're on the team. And you know, if you might not, if you have to be a Cowboys fan to follow, but if you remember, like
I always follow the Cowboys.
It was like Tony Romo, Terrell Owens was like, the reason we're not winning is you're not throwing me the ball enough. Although Terrell Owens was leading the league in drop passes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just kept, and it was like.
But somebody's dropping the ball here. And is it the White House or is it the Fed? Now, when I look at.
The market thinks it's the Fed.
I look at the political side of things as we're starting to ramp up towards a presidential race. And you discount this quite often, but hear me out. This is where I think it actually is coming into play because you've got Squawk Box and talking pundits that are pushing a political agenda. Now, whether it's political or not, they're pushing an agenda and leading a discussion into, well, it's policy, it's politics, okay? But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, somebody's prefacing something for a political, where I go, okay, strip this down, step back, take the politics out of it, and okay, fine. Give the White House their way. What's the economy look like? What's inflation look like?
Well, it looks like what it did.
Yeah, what it did. What we've been fighting to slowly come out of. But, okay, maybe that wasn't a good enough lesson. Let them break it. Let the Fed step back and go, okay, you want 25% interest rates? You want economy in the toilet? You want, let it happen.
Yeah, you work at McDonald's, you make $50 an hour. A loaf of bread is $50. If that's the economy you want,
that could be that very well could be the economy.
I mean, and of course that's bad for everybody. And we do have some other economic headwinds in terms of with interest rates higher. This increase in the debt and the interest on that becomes a bigger problem at higher interest rates, right? Like, I mean, so now you're talking about the interest cost on our debt going way up. So there's all kinds of these problems. But I guess for the first time, what I saw now, I always love it when we get to the conspiracy theory. Because I always look, well, what's really behind the conspiracy theory? Well, what's behind the conspiracy theory is what we've been talking about on this show for now 2 years, which is the market sees this completely different than the Fed and the bond securities. And the market sees this as the market wants 6 rate cuts next year, minimum. They think the Fed has aggressively raised rates too fast. They think the Fed's been too aggressive with inflation.
When all this started, we've had this discussion. They didn't react fast enough,
right? And the market just thinks that now they overbaked it because they wouldn't have had to react this harsh if they'd reacted faster, but they still shouldn't have reacted this harsh. And on the other hand, you have a Fed who's like, no, but the Fed. Where the Fed got kind of fueled this, Powell himself fueled it. And he fueled it when it's been higher for longer. We're going to stay the course. Inflation at 2%, unemployment at 4%, and stay. It is almost like that scene in Star Wars, stay on target. Like, doesn't matter what else the hell is going on. Stay on target. I don't care what other data says. And they've kind of accused the Fed of not being data dependent and seeing other data because truthfully, the Fed isn't paying attention to some data that's contraction. That is showing contraction. They're paying attention to employment. They're paying attention to the CPI core inflation, and it's stay on target till we get to 2% and 4%.
Okay, but my question is, if that's what the Fed's professing, that lends stability to the market. The market thrives on stability. Isn't that what they want to hear? Shouldn't that be what they want to hear?
The market doesn't in this case, because stability means higher cost for business, which slows the market and creates contraction, and not growth, which favors the stock market. But here's where Powell kind of screwed himself. He did do this dovish pivot in the last meeting where he's like, well, I could see us maybe cutting rates a few times.
Ugh.
And so what happened is the market
They don't learn.
The
Words
market
matter.
jumped on that, and the stock market, the market sees this as this dramatic change in mindset. And
It's not dramatic. It's
who knows? It could have been
words and nuance.
Could have been
matters.
a careless statement, but the rest of the board came out very hawkish. So he was a little dovish. Were they playing good cop, bad cop? Because
Maybe.
the bottom line is, whatever happened, you can say the stock market had a positive reaction to all of it.
Joe Sheehan, he is your mortgage planner. Give him a call over at Benchmark Mortgage, 701-400-3926. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach along with Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner. Give him a call over at Benchmark Mortgage, 701-400-3926. Okay, Joe, so whether or not there's a fight between the Fed and the current administration and accusing the Fed of playing politics, or whoever is playing politics or isn't, comes down to one thing. What are the rates going to do?
I think they're maybe going to go up. I think they're maybe going to go down. I think they could probably stay the same. That's what I think.
You heard it here first. That's the prediction. That's what's going to happen after the new year. Or is it before the new year?
So here's the technicals behind that very nuanced statement. The truth is,
You're like a weather guy now. You're not going to be wrong, right?
Right. I'm going to be right 24 hours before it happens.
Yes, eventually.
So here's what we're up against. Okay, the Fed hates the housing market. Okay, Fed hates the housing market, and I mean that's how it feels, not because he actually hates it. If you're in the housing market, it feels like the Fed hates you.
What side of the housing market, though?
The good side, the side that wants more houses sold. So the Fed does not want a hot housing market. Okay. And the reason the Fed does not want a hot housing market is because it's inflationary. Think about housing as an economic driver. And if the housing market's hot, it is an economic driver.
But if you're looking at houses and there's a shortage, we're running a deficit for supply. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that push a hot housing market?
No.
Okay.
Because you paying a lot for the very few, for a diminished inventory is a smaller impact than there being new construction going off the chain. Right? So because you're going to fuel the housing market a little bit by paying too much for a house. But if houses are being built, you're talking
plays a lot more into the economy.
More jobs,
labor,
more supplies, more manufacturing, more trucking, more,
But I also look at, you take a look at what's going on down the southern border. You take a look at the population. You take a look at the lag with supply chain that's taken place. You look at the slowdown of new construction, new builds. I only see the cost of houses going up.
Right.
Because I don't see a lot of inventory out there, and it's going to get worse.
But it's the price of a diminished inventory going up. And paying more for a house that's already built is different than paying more for houses that are about to be built.
Because of the other economy streams that go into that.
Exactly. And so the Fed, remember, we talk about this. Why hasn't the Fed liquidated this $8 trillion on its books yet?
No place to put it.
No, that's not true. People would buy it like crazy. People would buy it first. The truth is, it's a gun to the head of the market. It's a threat. In other words, if bond buyers buy rates down too far now, if they get hot on the bond market now, the Fed's going, well, we'll just release these. How do you feel about that?
If you want to play politics,
and that's good. And I mean, in terms of it's good to the bond buyers. So in some ways, it's both. Then I don't want to buy too deep, too long in the current treasuries or the current securities being sold. But I also don't want to buy. I want to also hold my powder because if you put those on the market, I want to buy them. And so the consequence is, truthfully, rates should be lower now. The history of the 30-year fixed rate is that it tracks about 2% above the 10-year Treasury. Well, the 10-year Treasury is at 3.8. So where should interest rates be tracking on average?
Where they typically are on average.
Which would be 5.8.
Yes.
But they're not. They're tracking at about 6.5. Well, so interest rates should technically be lower now. But
so
why?
What's holding them up?
The Fed. The Fed's $8 trillion that's out there, or more, whatever the exact number is. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. But the Fed doesn't want rates in the low fives right now. The Fed doesn't want rates in the
because that
mid-fives.
feeds the inflation side of things.
Right. So rates technically should go down. Now, everybody understanding this, everybody played the Fed. Everybody believed the Fed was going to halt, stall, pause, kind of a permanent basis, and rates moved before the Fed. So, I heard the Fed's going to lower rates. No. The market already reacted to what it believed the Fed was going to do, and rates had moved into the sixes before the Fed made this last statement. Rates now, after that, it has brought some stability in that rates have been consistently trading sideways around the mid sixes. And so rates are down. So the question is, are rates going to go down? Well, no, rates have already come down. Now, are rates going to go down further? And the answer technically should be yes, they should. And how are you going to know that? Watch inflation. The Fed is going to feel more dovish, the ability to keep less pressure on rates, the more that inflation comes into target. So there's two things you're watching for: recession and inflation.
All right, so in recession and inflation, now some nuances with those. I want to come back and talk a little bit about what are some of the indicators you should be looking for, because we know where the Fed's at, wanting to curb inflation, and everybody's afraid of the R word. And is there a magic point where those intersect? We'll find out about that when we come back. We're talking with Joe Sheehan. He's your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Follow us on.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Like us on Facebook. Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, brought to you by Big Boy. Just get in line. It moves fast. Benchmark Mortgage. Call Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner, at 701-400-3926. Dakota Pharmacy and Dakota Natural Health Center. We're here to help you stay well. Trademark Realty. Peak Automotive and Service. And Silver Ranch. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Michael. I'm with Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. All right, Joe, we're talking about rates, what they're going to do, and they could go up, they could go down, they could stay the same. Most prophetic thing you've said all year.
Yes.
By far. But
I'm
that's
just tired of being wrong.
that's what's going to happen. We're talking about.
Technically they're set to go down. I mean, technically they're set to go down, but
technically they should be down now.
But they've gone down 8 straight weeks now, with a Fed that's not interested in them going a lot lower. So I think you got to look at this is probably where they're going to be for the near future. For the near future, this is where they're going to be.
A couple months at least.
Yep. But I think as the Fed is going to cut rates only based on if it sees inflation moving to its target. And the only way you're going to see them cut them sooner than later is if the target's coming up faster than expected.
Okay, now I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen because going back to the economy side of things, and before the break I asked, where's the intersection of the inflation and the tipping point to a recession? And then I look at what's going on right now from a retail perspective and credit card debt.
That's where that's the underwater. People
are spending like drunken sailors right now. No offense to sailors, because people are worse. This financial holiday season has been record spending, but it's just going on credit card. So we're going to have record credit card debt. And we spent years, people getting out of credit card debt up to COVID, which kind of screwed up a lot of stuff. But where's that play into this? Because there's some stupid stuff going on right now.
Well, I think that's the reason why the market's saying the Fed's wrong. I think that
everybody's spending money. We're all good.
And so tomorrow we'll get the PCE tomorrow, and so we'll see what that says. But I think that this is where there's such a divergence between the market and the Fed, is that the market believes the Fed's wrong, is too aggressive, should be more aggressive in cutting rates. I think it's crazy, so you did the fastest rate hikes in history in the last 18 months. And
after how long did they artificially suppress
at
them?
The moment you get done, you're talking about cutting them. I don't know. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is that this is a reaction to artificially suppressing them since 2009?
9. So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to have a hard time reclimating with is, okay, this isn't a reaction to something that took place in the marketplace or a reaction to a normal economy, because the economy was artificial because those rates were artificially suppressed. So this is new ground.
Right. So the argument, in fact, this was the part of the argument on Squawk Box this morning, is that the Fed's goal should be about getting us to normal. And the argument is, what is normal, and does the Fed know what normal is based on where the economy's at? Like what is normal? Should the 10-year based on what we've been through was normal 2.5% on the 10-year Treasury? Is normal 3.5% on the Treasury? Well, right now the Treasury's trading at 3.9.
Well, and how
is it 1.5?
But how it fits into the economy, you got to go back to pre-2009, and I don't know if you include or disallow that ramp up to the artificial housing bubble that burst that led to a lot of this and the artificial suppression of the rates.
Right.
So when do you go back and go, okay, what's normal?
Right. Right, because so how long does something have to be where it's at to become normal? So because you go through the 2009, well, interest rates were at 0 for how long? Mm-hmm. They were 0 for how long? So was 0 normal? And can 0 be normal even? Is that even a thing? So, right. So what is normal? And I think that's where everybody's trying to figure out is where's the sweet spot where the economy operates on its own without interference. And I think the interesting thing, we'll get to hear about the perspective on election, but what I thought was funny, because I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of people that give me the opinion that, interest rates will go down because of the election. They always go down before the election. And I could definitely see why an incumbent would want that. Like that makes sense to me that would not that an incumbent can control it, but I can certainly see why an incumbent would want that.
Well, on the surface, it looks good. The optics look good. It's like,
right.
Okay, getting gas prices down right before an election. The optics look good, but what are the mechanisms behind that? That's what matters.
So what's funny to me, or what amuses me, and either way, I don't have an opinion about either way. It amuses me that one side of the conspiracy says, well, obviously it's an election year, they're going to go down, because that's what the incumbent wants. On the other side of the conspiracy theory is that the Fed's all appointed by Trump, so that they're going to. So to my friends who just believe that the election will control interest rates, it's funny to me because when you listen to people who know who the Fed members are, they feel the conspiracy is the other way, that it's set up to elect Trump and keep rates higher if it can. So. And I don't, and whether rates are 5 or 6 or 3 or 10 or whatever, doesn't really come down to what Bill Clinton, he didn't say it, one of his economic advisors, I think it was Jim Carville said it. And it became the kind of slogan of the Clinton campaign, it's the economy, stupid. Well, it really does come down to how people feel about the economy, right? And is there anything that's going to make people feel good anymore about the economy? I don't know.
Sure, you got to pay off my student loans and pay off my. Government's going to pay off everything, right?
But we've become so divided in interests, and those
True.
divisions have become so codified and crystallized that yes, that will make a portion of the economy feel good. But it makes another part of the economy feel really bad.
Well, the other thing is, though, we're so fragmented as a country right now. So you take a look at the different political interests, the different financial interests, and, I tend to look at things as just being a little snapshot in time, and you have to look at the bigger picture. But trying to get... I'm a big majority rules guy. There's no majority anymore. There's no consensus on the majority of people thinking that we're working in the right direction. We're just fragmented. And the economy's fragmented because of that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I can't wait till we get to the break, though, because I have to ask your daughter, who's in the studio with us today, Sydney, if you're actually amusing at home.
Oh, so,
no? Okay, I was just kind of curious. Sydney, you want to chime in on that?
That answer is
at
no.
home?
Oh, it depends on the day and it depends on who he's talking to.
Okay, well, fair enough.
If he's talking to you, he's very amusing.
If he's being dad, well, okay.
Go clean the garage.
Hey, I hide in the garage. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach along with Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner over at Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call, 701-400-3926. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
You're tuned to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. I'm Steve Bach along with Joe Sheehan, your mortgage planner over Benchmark Mortgage. Give him a call at 701-400-3926. And we're talking about what's leading up into the Christmas season and what the markets and interest rates are going to look like after the new year, and if there's no better time to start a mortgage plan than yesterday. You might want to give Joe a call, 701-400-3926. Also, Sydney, Joe's daughter, in the studio with us, who is 20 and a college student down in the Twin Cities area. And Sydney, I wanted to go a little different direction. So, Joe and I talk all the time about getting a plan together, a mortgage plan, and how that fits into your financial plan. So you can get down the road of home ownership, and of course your home, one of your biggest investment pieces in most people's lifetime for retirement and building wealth. You're 20. Now, I'm not going to ask you specifically because I know the household you were raised in, and you probably, through osmosis, have a plan.
Yeah.
What about your friends? So that 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, typical college kid, does your generation, does your age group have a concept of what that looks like? Because, we talk about Gen Z and millennials and we talk about workforce and how there's not a concept that I'm going to be in this job for a long period of time because, hey, I might have something new in a couple of years. It seems like there's a lot of skipping around. Does that lend itself to having a financial plan and what that looks like long-term down the road?
Well, I know a lot of people my age do have financial plans, and they do have things in place for them to, rely on financially. But there is a lot of skipping around just due to the fact that nothing's really, consistent for us. I know a lot of people who it's very much kind of like a hopeless demographic. A lot of us have just, realized, okay, everything's expensive. We can hardly afford anything. It's I know so many people who have just pretty much already put home ownership in a coffin and just sent it away.
But a lot in your generation is also the ones that are screaming, it's we need to work at McDonald's and make $20 an hour, or they talk about that minimum wage. Is there a concept of how that minimum wage fits into the bigger picture financially and not being able to afford a home because of inflation? And, like Joe said, hey, you make $50 an hour working at McDonald's, but a loaf of bread costs $50. So is there any concept or thought when you're talking to your friends about the bigger picture financially and how the pieces fit together?
I think the main thing people don't understand is that it's its own endless loop. It's its own vicious cycle. You up wages, you increase the price of other things. I don't know if people are totally comprehending that, or people that I know are totally comprehending that. But there is some idea. We do understand that. It's more just a desperation of how do I achieve the same things my parents have achieved in a totally different economy.
So the other question to that then is, because we know when inflation's bad, there's a lot of people, a lot of families that are living paycheck to paycheck. And when I look at the different generations and your generation, it's almost like it's gone beyond the paycheck to paycheck to where it's a day to day. And you're looking at the finances from a day to day perspective, yet have no problem to go buy a $7 cup of coffee twice a day, or, what did you go Christmas shopping with, and, throw it on the credit card. It seems like there's a little disconnect.
There's some irresponsibility. There's some irresponsibility to it for sure, but I don't know if that's
because it's kind of it's so far down the road and there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm going to go shopping. Retail therapy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's just it's not going to make a difference in the bigger picture, so I throw my hands up, but I'm just going to go live my life.
Yeah, exactly. There is a very much hopeless attitude about it that does lead people to make, I guess, what I would observe as irresponsible financial decisions. But it's also one of those things where it's if this is going to suck anyways, I might as well enjoy my moment.
I'm going down in a blaze of glory. It's going to suck.
Very much so.
So, Joe, do you ever get people or clients that come in and go, hey, you need to have a conversation with my child because they need to get down a good path? Because I know you've got Sydney lined out. I'm assuming. You hope probably too. But as far as parents and customers out there, it's and you see families come in all the time. And do you ever think in the back of your head that's it's not too early for you to start your child on this path?
Yeah, I mean, I really encourage parents to get, and parents do reach out to me. I mean, and we do schedule appointments where we because there are some opportunities where if, depending on the situation, you can start home ownership as a co-signer with your kids for low money down programs. And a lot of people don't know that. You can help your kid buy a house with 3% down, and you could do it together. And you could
Well, and mostly you think about kids going off to college, and what's the best way for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, depending on the school you go to? What's the best avenue for saving money while your kids need someplace to live?
Right, yeah. If you
own the house.
Yeah, if you have the bill,
have roommates.
If you have the kid that you think is up to playing landlord, and having renters work with them, I mean, that all depends on. You have to have that kid that can help you with that. You can't have somebody that's definitely not going to be able to help you manage that, especially if you're doing it remotely.
Yeah, you don't want the party house on campus. You want the kid that's got the grad students working.
But there are ways to go down. If you had a kid that was motivated to enter into home ownership early, you as a parent can support that as a co-signer.
Beautiful. Well, we'll see you after Christmas. Merry Christmas, Joe. Merry Christmas, Sydney. Thanks for coming in today. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
KLXX AM, Mandan, Bismarck, a Town Square media station, broadcasting from the View Community Credit Union Studio.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.